The loss had been horrific, and Maddie's friends were feeling it too. One of her closest, Ashlyn, had known Maddie for only a few years, but during a December 2nd memorial service in Post Falls, she recalled spending more days with her than without her. They had shared a room at Pie, and then later Ashlyn lived briefly in the King Road house where she'd celebrated her 21st birthday. Ashlyn recalled having big-ticket adventures with Maddie, but the most special moments they'd share were the little ones. They woke up and made their coffees together, shared their agendas for each day, self-tanned on Wednesdays, listened to music while getting dressed together on Thursdays, and shared sweets after dinner. They wore matching bracelets, they wrote each other notes, they danced to Yeah by Usher. They'd even shared a zipped-up hoodie once on a cold night, the two of their bodies smushed into it. We pretty much did everything together, Ashlyn said. Our weeks were like copy and paste there for a while. She fought back tears, conjuring what Maddie had meant to her. You grow so much as a person on your own in college, Ashlyn said, but we got to grow together every step of the way. Going through the rest of her life without Maddie was going to be tough. I'm not only living for myself now, but for the rest of the life that Maddie wasn't able to live. Every chance she got, Ashlyn was going to do all the things that Maddie loved to do. She would watch the sunsets, go to concerts, take road trips. And she would imagine Maddie looking down on her with a smile. She's going to be a busy girl up in heaven because she is now the guardian angel to some wild ones who really need her down here. Another of Maddie's friends, Sophia, was Maddie's big at her sorority. She loved her mom, Sophia said through tears that shook her whole body during the memorial service. She always told me, don't you think my mom's so cute and so pretty? Maddie's mom, Karen, who would have done anything to give Maddie a better life, and Maddie knew it, Sylvia said. At the memorial service, Karen stood at the podium beside Maddie's stepfather, Scott. She wore a pink top and held her husband's arm. Scott wore a pink tie. He spoke of watching football games with little Maddie and of Maddie laughing when he would pick her up each time the Steelers scored, or Maddie riding on bikes or fishing with her family. She had been his and Karen's world, one that was a darker place now, he said. Eventually, he folded the pieces of paper he'd written his notes on. Karen had said nothing. The pain of speaking about her daughter into a microphone to the world seemed too much for her to bear. Not once did she let go of her husband's arm, as if she might have collapsed in grief without him there. The police were called again to 1122 King Road in the months before the murders, responding to another noise complaint, and this time it was Maddie they met. Just before 9 p.m. on September 1st, 2022, officers approached the front door and knocked loudly. The lights in the upper bedroom windows were like glowing white orbs in the night, and the downstairs bedroom windows had thin curtains pulled across them. Body cam footage showed police, 3 officers, and a ride-along observer had walked uphill toward the entry, their footsteps crunching on gravel. A raucous banter emanated from inside the house. There was no overhead light at the door, which had only become visible with the flashlight pointed at it. A young woman answered immediately, light spilling out from the residence. She wore shorts and a summer top and appeared to be slightly intoxicated but pleasant. One of the officers asked to speak to somebody on the lease, whoever was in charge of the resident that night. I can go get them real quick, the young woman said, closing the door on him. The front stoop went black again. A whole minute passed. Nobody came back. Another of the officers lifted a backpack from the nearby gravel. It was heavy with cans. There's a lot of fucking alcohol in there, he said. One of the officers knocked loudly again 7 times. The noise inside died down, but still nobody answered. We're only here for a noise complaint, the officer shouted. Come to the damn door. Another officer giggled off camera. Soon, all 3 officers circled the outside of the home, shining their flashlights. We're not leaving, an officer shouted toward a box fan ticking from a second-floor window. They'd seen shadows cross the room. He shined his strobe through it, but nobody came to the window. We can also see you, another officer shouted. Through a crease in the curtains of the front-facing kitchen window, another officer's body cam footage showed a set of golf clubs. Months later, the bag and clubs would be tagged as potential evidence, removal from the house streaming on most major networks. the clubs, and a mattress stained with blood. Hunter Johnson and another student eventually answered the door for police. Hunter with his white necklace, a polo again, eyes bright and wide. The other boy with floppy hair, a t-shirt. So, I just looked for everyone that lives here and they're not here right now, Hunter said. No one's here that lives here at all? The disbelieving but practiced officer waited patiently. No one's here that lives here, Hunter repeated. Another officer interjected. So everyone here is trespassing. Well, no, no one's here that's trespassing, but no one's here that lives here right now. I have no clue where they went. No clue. Hunter's mannerisms and speech suggested he wasn't sober. They left and went over to some other party. His friend spoke over him. He too wore a white necklace and had a surfer boy look. Who does live here? Another officer said. What are their names? I'm not actually sure, Hunter's friend said. I live across the street. I just came over. I haven't drank a drop. Male? Female? A cop with a beard asked. I think it's mainly females, Hunter's friend said. I think it's like 4 females. Hunter said nothing, shaking his head as if he hadn't a clue. What sorority are they affiliated with? The officer asked. I don't know, the other kid said. I don't know, Hunter also said. I'm not stupid, the officer eventually told them. Hunter smiled. The officer pressured them further, patient but this time stern. I'd rather deal with this as a noise complaint than get a hold of the Greek council and the Greek board and all of that, and the dean of students, and playing all of these stupid fucking games. He shined his flashlight at the backpack of booze on the ground, adding an implicit threat. I guarantee you there's a lot of underage drinking here. Do you want us to try to get a name or a phone number? The boy with Hunter asked. If you could, the cop said. The 2 boys went inside. The cop started emptying the backpack of its alcohol, opening and then pouring what looked like a dozen cans of Truly vodka seltzer into the weeds. A few moments later, Hunter Johnson returned and held out an iPhone to the police. Maddie Mogan's name was on the screen, glowing in the dark in Hunter's hand. An officer took the phone and put her on speaker. Can you hear me, Maddie? Yes, I can hear you. Her voice was like Kaylie's talking to the police, business casual and sober sounding. Do you live at 1122 Queen Street? The officer had confused Queen with King as they intersected just beyond the property. Maddie didn't correct him. Yes, I do. The reason that we're here is that we received a noise complaint of loud music, partying. Once we approached the house, people started running away. They left a bunch of alcohol behind. We're not even coming for the alcohol. We're coming for the noise complaint. Maddie remained silent, listening. The officer seemed old enough to be her father. Eventually, he scolded her. You have a house full of random people. He was saying that Maddie needed to be careful without exactly saying it. He issued Maddie a verbal warning for the noise violation. He told her she needed to come home. Chapter 22. At the University of Idaho vigil for his daughter, a special event held to assist students through the mourning process, Ben Mogan wore a gray suit, the jacket buttoned tightly across his sturdy chest. His cropped haircut, chiseled jawline, and prominent goatee made him look tough. The voice he soon addressed the crowd with was anything but. He approached the podium and shakily unfolded a piece of paper filled with prepared remarks, which he would eventually stray from. His breathing was shallow and his body appeared stiffened by grief. The air seemed sucked out of the room by Ben Mogan's obvious pain. He shifted his balance from knee to knee and hooked his thumbs into the front pockets of his suit pants, jiggling them with nervousness. Maddie May, she was, having only just begun, he'd already stopped to catch his breath. She was Karen and my only child that we ever had, he finally said. He then struggled through a list of the beautiful things about Maddie that he could remember at the moment. Her happiness, her intelligence. She was funny. She was delightful. The perfect little baby. On the network streaming the event, an Instagram photo of Maddie filled the screen. She wore a bright white summer dress in a wooded park setting. She was tan, leaning slightly backward, her blonde hair draping across one shoulder for the photo. Ben Mogan smiled nervously. He spoke of how he used to show Maddie's photo to explain who he was to new acquaintances who wanted to get to know him. Well, I have this daughter, he'd say. He'd tell them she was on the dean's list at college and that she worked hard and that she had great friends. There was often nothing noteworthy about himself that he felt like sharing other than his adoration of Maddie, which new people in his life tended to learn a lot about. We loved going to see live music, he said. That's always been my favorite thing to do, and so I started taking her to concerts when she was younger. We saw some really good shows together. He explained that Maddie was upset when the popular musician Mac Miller was touring nearby and she couldn't get tickets because the concert had sold out. Ben had desperately wanted to surprise Maddie with tickets to the show, the one she later posted about on Instagram. And I didn't know what I was going to do, he said into the microphone, but his smile widened and the pace of his storytelling picked up. And I entered all these radio station concerts, and like the night before it happened, I won 4 tickets and got to bring her and her friends, and they were meet and greet tickets. After the show, he and Maddie and her friends had been introduced to Mac Miller, he explained. That was one of the happiest moments Ben had of being Maddie's dad, coming through for her in the clutch, and he loved seeing her excitement for live music match his own. Ben was a man who cared about the little things, and he loved that his daughter did too. Many in the audience listening to him were holding one another close. With heartache in his voice, he spoke about Maddie's boyfriend, Jake Schreiger, whom she'd been dating for almost a year at the time of the murder. It was her first real relationship. I'm so glad that she got to have had a little taste of what it's like to be in love with someone. And he choked on tears. He's just a really great guy. They treated each other the way you're supposed to. And more tears came, but he pushed through them. I was really proud to call him my daughter's boyfriend, and maybe someday they would have gotten married. He looked downward, then at it without looking up. It seemed like it at least. After the vigil, Maddie's father returned to his home full of acoustic guitars, the 2 jobs he worked, the counseling sessions he attended. He'd been out at the movies by himself on November 13th when Maddie's mother called to tell him about the murders. Because he was in the theater, he hadn't responded right away. Then his own mother called and he knew something was wrong. He and Maddie's mother had cried together that day on the phone. The horror was unspeakable. The first Christmas without Maddie was excruciating. The snow had been falling like crazy in North Idaho, but he couldn't enjoy its beauty. His girl was gone and no one knew who had taken her. Eventually, Ben walked into a tattoo shop in Spokane Valley in Washington State, just across the border from Coeur d'Alene, and sat down for his first tattoo ever, a set of angel wings to match the tattoo Maddie and several of her sorority sisters had gotten. His father and stepfather, both in their 70s, joined him. In the tattoo parlor, they rolled up their shirt sleeves. Within minutes, the small black stencil of Maddie's wings had been inked into Ben's arms. Oh, very hard book. It's getting hard to read. It's pretty heavy. But I will keep going until I can't. So we are now at chapter 23. Xana Cronulla grew up in Post Falls, nestled in the heavily wooded Coeur d'Alene Mountains halfway to Washington State on the winding Spokane River. She and her older sister Jasmine, a confidant in her early years, although the girl's parents, Jeff and Kara, didn't last long together. In Xana's younger years, Jeff was briefly incarcerated on drug-related charges. Xana's mother was frequently incarcerated as well, even reportedly just weeks after Xana's birth. For a time, when Xana and her sister were still very young, both parents were in trouble at once and the girls needed to live with relatives. Xana's Aunt Kim, a big-hearted, church-going Christian, took them in. Her own children were grown, and she raised Xana and Jasmine for just under 2 years in Post Falls, loving them both dearly and offering the structure that had missing from their lives. Raising her nieces felt like a blessing to Kim. She'd had fun with the girls. Xana had been a joyful, impish child, her aunt recalled. On one occasion, when Xana was small, Kim was looking for her in the house and found her hiding out in the bathroom. She'd found my Crisco, Kim said of Xana during the Post Falls memorial service on December 2nd, and she'd wiped it all over her body like it was body lotion. She laughed at the memories. The bathroom had been covered in Crisco as well. It was all over the walls and on the floors. They lived in a house with squeaking floorboards, and the two girls slept in a room together. Many nights Anna liked to stay awake past her bedtime, getting out of bed to horse around. Aunt Kim, Santa won't go to bed and she's keeping me up, Jasmine would complain from the room down the hall. Kim would get out of her own bed to investigate, but her steps creaking along the floorboards would alert Santa to her imminent arrival. Every time she could hear Xana's little feet scurrying back to bed, and by the time Kim had reached the children's room, Xana would be back under her covers pretending nothing happened. It became a game they played together for a while. The girl's mother continued to struggle with drugs and the fallout of addiction, but eventually their father put the pieces of his life back together, and Xana and Jasmine went to live with him. He stayed healthy and stability lasted. The girls became active at sports at a young age, and Xana was a standout gymnast in her late elementary and junior high years. Todd McLean was her gymnastics coach at Flip Factory Gymnastics in North Idaho for about 6 years, and his daughter Sydney was one of Xana's best friends during that time. Xana's dad, divorced from the girl's mom by now, was working his job in construction and working hard to raise his children alone. The schedule was hectic for him, and Xana would go from gymnastics straight to her coach's home until her father could pick her up after work. If you had spent 5 minutes with her, you would have fallen in love with her, her coach told an ABC reporter about those years. She just loved everybody, and she was so witty, so funny. She would have drawn you in. McLean's daughter, now a gymnastics coach herself at McLean's Newton Academy in Florida, agreed. She was just the funniest person, Sydney said of Xana during her early years when they were close, sharing gymnastics and a Jeep friendship. If you were with her, you were laughing the whole time. When Sydney heard about Xana's mother, she'd been preparing for an evening training session with her students. I'm sorry, when Sydney heard about Xana's murder, she'd been preparing for an evening training session with her students. The news was crushing. And then I coached. I was a hot mess all night watching the girls, she told the reporter. Because it's kind of like watching me and Xana's relationship, the relationships they have with each other. She could remember Xana as the little girl in a blue and white leotard, bows holding back her hair, the two of them together, sometimes wearing their medals around their necks after a weekend competition. We were really, really close in middle school, Sydney told News Nation. I always knew I could count on her, even now. She hesitated, her breath catching. It's just a lot, she said. Of the thousands of photos of Xana circulating online after her murder, she looked happy in each. In her TikTok videos, she was dancing or laughing, performing skits. She was jumping. She was holding out her arms, just like in the gymnastics photos of herself as a little girl. She was still smiling. She was little. It's almost like losing another daughter, Sydney's father told ABC. His eyes were bloodshot with sadness. Same age as my daughter. This could have been her. Chapter 24. When Xana and Jasmine were growing up, many people thought they were twins, even though Jasmine was 2 years older. They had the same high cheekbones, the warm-toned skin, the long dark hair that hung straight down. When Xana was older, she wore half shirts and high-waisted shorts in the summer, Carhartt beanies in the winter, her hair braided into long pigtails tucked into the collar of her puffy coat. She painted her nails red for formals, drank beer out of plastic cups, wore a scrunchie on her wrist sometimes. Her personality was magnetic, and Jasmine would often get upset when the two were teenagers because she thought her own friends liked Xana more than they liked Jasmine herself. Xana's friend Emily had a big sister who was friends with Jasmine, and the two older girls would side-eye their younger siblings for grabbing all the attention and for generally being more cool. It was just an undeniable fact the older siblings thought, one they begrudgingly learned to deal with. Emily now remembered Xana through a stream of tears at the post-fall service. She was my other half, Emily said. Everyone knew we were a two-in-one deal. They'd been friends since the day they'd met. She was an amazing friend, comedian, pop star, therapist, sister, girlfriend, and daughter. This girl was the light in everyone's life. Emily constantly told Xana how much she loved her. After high school, they'd gone to different colleges, but still made time to see each other as often as possible. One time had e- One time Xana had even convinced Emily to drive to Moscow during a snowstorm because the two girls were missing each other. Emily says guilt trip Xana guilt tripped her into the journey, complaining that they never had enough time together. Each time Emily would visit her at the University of Idaho, Xana would show her friend off as if it was the first time, even though everybody had already met her. She would reintroduce me and then introduce me again to all of her college friends as, "This is my best friend. She's Asian." As if they couldn't figure that one out. Emily smiled through her tears. She always told me that if she were to die tomorrow, Emily said, the tears now were flowing heavily. She would be okay with it because she had lived every day to the fullest. Not that she really believed that was a possibility. She knew she was going to make it big one day, Emily said, at something. She told me that if she ever got famous, she would bring me along to enjoy that life with her. Their lives had seemed to offer endless possibilities and endless years. We talked about our dream wedding and how we were going to each be each other's bridesmaids. We talked about what kind of moms we were going to be. I always said I wanted 3 kids, and she said she'd probably be the single one and have no kids because she'll be the cool aunt. She choked on her words. Life is so unfair and unpredictable. My heart aches knowing I can't see her again in this lifetime. The cool aunt, it made perfect sense. Xana had never forgotten all her Aunt Kim had done for her when her parents couldn't cope. While Xana was growing up, her mom had more than 40 interactions with the police in North Idaho. Most were for possessions of drugs or drug paraphernalia, but some were more serious. She'd once been convicted of injury to a child for exposing her daughters to her drug use. Kara wasn't a violent woman, but she was struggling. It showed in her mug shots, her face progressively skinnier with age, but also with the wear and tear that comes from prolonged substance abuse. Her long hair getting grayer at the temples, her eyes more sunken. She was infrequently in Xana's life, but she was still her mother. Kara's Facebook page, like many mothers of a certain era, often reflected her love for her children. "What did your daughter inherit from you?" were the caption of a 2019 name test post that she tagged Xana in. Name test offered a quasi-spiritual astrological reading comparing a mother and daughter's names. "Just like you, Xana is incredibly genuine and loving," Kara's results said. "She has inherited your heart of gold and has seen how happy you are when you help your loved ones. But she has also learned from you how to be fearless in the face of challenges. Your strong, nonconformist personality has inspired her to never lose her fighting spirit or pride in who she is." Xana's mom was trying. There were photos of her childhood and of herself looking healthy as recently as 2019. Xana had been her little girl, even if she couldn't care for her the way she had wanted to. She had watched Xana from afar, proud of her gymnastics accomplishments and her durable spirit when she was younger, and proud of the woman Xana had been growing into. At one point that year, Kara posted, "One of the best feelings in the world is when you hug someone you love and they hug you back even tighter." 3 years later, her daughter was dead and Kara had relapsed. Days after the murders, Kara was back in jail. Chapter 25. While in high school in Post Falls, Xana was on the volleyball, track, and soccer teams. She held down a job as well, working as a server at the Coeur d'Alene, Texas Roadhouse, between the Dollar Tree and the Red Lobster. The view from the restaurant's parking lot was less suburban. Just beyond were the rolling green foothills leading into the Coeur d'Alene National Forest and its 750,000 acres, which were among the most pristine in America, home to grizzly bears, wolves, cougars, and wolverines. Xana's home with her sister and father and their dog, Shoeshine, was modest and tidy with 4 bedrooms, dark hardwood floors, and a backyard with a green fenced-in lawn. Life with her father now was completely different than it had been in Xana's younger days. Jeff had started his own firm, Kernodle Construction, building anything from small engineered decks to large, impressive houses with spiral staircases. He took the girls on family vacations, which Xana loved, and in time her lifestyle was similar to the comfortable one she'd lived with her Aunt Kim. She graduated from Post Falls High School in 2020, and by late that summer had moved to Moscow, where she was majoring in marketing at the University of Idaho, and she joined the Pi Beta Phi sorority. At Pi Phi, she became close to another freshman, a girl named Ella, who said after Xana's death that Xana cared about her relationships more than anything else, and that is the best quality anyone can have. At the memorial, Ella remembered the time at the end of their freshman year, after many of the other students had gone home for the summer, when she and Xana decided it would be a blast to get a kiddie pool and try to swim in it. The Moscow heat was scorching. They found a blow-up pool at a local store, then ran across the parking lot with it over their heads and stuffed it into Ella's car. They spent that day and many others that summer soaking in the shin-deep water the pool held. Actually, swimming, they discovered right away, wasn't an option. It's not much, but it's about the little things and the spontaneous things that don't seem interesting, but they become the best days of your life because of the people you're around. Ella said, a lot of my best days had Xana there. At the Mad Greek in downtown Moscow, a small family-owned restaurant where both Xana and Maddie worked, a coworker named Isla hadn't gotten the chance to know either of the girls too well, but they had trained her when she was first hired, and she remembers Xana as kind and helpful. Both she and Maddie were sweet, Isla says, a hint of tears in her eyes. Soon after she started at the restaurant, Isla would be wearing a black rubber memorial bracelet on her left wrist. The names of the four murder victims, including her co-workers, printed in the university's signature gold and yellow. The same bracelet appeared on the wrist of the daytime bartender at the corner club, a girl with blonde hair who slightly resembled Maddie, and on the wrists of baristas in local coffee shops, students walking through campuses, pedestrians in town hurrying to their jobs or stepping into stores or just getting into cars. The yellow of the font matched the yellow flowers Xana held in photographs, a small sunflower behind her ear and one as she posed beside a river, her hair draping forward over her halter top, dappled sunlight on the water. Chapter 26. Xana appeared in police body cam footage when the Moscow PD were once again called to 1122 King Road after an earlier noise complaint. Just after midnight on September 2nd, 2022, less than 4 hours after their warning to Maddie over the phone. Country singer Lee Brice played over an outdoor Bluetooth speaker on the second floor patio around the back of the house. A young man stood on the patio with his back to the approaching police officer who spotlighted the area with his flashlight. Moscow, excuse me, Moscow PD, the officer announced. A young woman tried to go back inside through the slider. Turn the music down, the officer now shouted from the weeds. They didn't. He shouted it again, gesturing with his flashlight. The music stopped. The officer told him, I need somebody to come to the door. The young man on the patio kept his back to the officer, who then added, the music stays off. The party's over. The officer clicked his flashlight off, walking past Anna's bedroom on the second floor and then past Bethany Funk's on the first floor as the ground sloped downward toward the communal parking area. The officer and his partner stood at the front door in the dark at first. When Xana eventually opened it, the officer shone his flashlight at her. She was barefoot, wearing black shorts and a red hoodie, her identification in her hand. Her eyes looked wobbly in their sockets, as if searching for rest. Hello, she said. Hello, miss. What's your name? The officer asked. Xana, she said. Xana, do you live here? Yes. She pushed her hair out of her face. Okay. Did Megan talk to you earlier? No. Okay. Does Megan live here? Xana looked confused. Megan? The officer's partner checked his notepad. Megan Mogan. Maddie Mogan. Yes, Xana said. Maddie Mogan, the first officer corrected himself. She does live here? Xana seemed caught off guard, searching for words, possibly intoxicated. Sorry. She's at the club. She's 21. I'm just going to bed. I had a couple of friends over, but this is my ID. She began to show the police officers her driver's license, turning it over in her hand and staring at it, but the officers didn't appear interested. Have you talked to Maddie tonight? Yes, I have, Xana said. She's at the corner club. Okay, did she tell you anything about anything that happened earlier? Honestly, not really. I've just been here just trying to go to bed. In the hot, wide beam of the officer's flashlight, Xana's fingers clutching her ID made shadows against the side of the house. The officer took her ID finally and handed it to his partner. Xana seemed more nervous than the situation called for. But then she'd grown up with police encounters that didn't necessarily end well. She again explained she wasn't 21, but that her roommates were. We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, the officer said. Okay, yeah, Xana seemed to relax finally. But this is the second noise complaint that we've had here tonight. I'm sorry, Xana said. So this time it was the blonde gal and the guy on the back porch playing music. I sincerely apologize, Xana told him. I'm just going to bed. So, okay, just so you understand, you could be getting a misdemeanor citation for this, which means you have to go in front of a judge and explain why you couldn't keep the people in your house quiet. Okay, Xana said. We've already talked to Maddie once. The only reason she's not getting a ticket is because she's not standing here in front of me. But I'm telling you right now, if we have to come back, you're getting a ticket. Okay, so I'm not right now, Xana asked him. I'm fine right now. You're not getting a ticket right now. I'm just trying to go to bed. Okay. I understand. You guys, you're coming here. I'm just going. She awkwardly struggled for next words. Her body seemed to be losing balance from exhaustion. We could hear you from clear down the road when we were coming up here, the officer told her. I'm so sorry, Xana said. We're past the point of having polite conversations, okay? Yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Xana told him. Eventually, the officer's partner pointed to an upstairs window and asked, Is the blonde gal and the guy up there, are they roommates too? He was pointing to Dylan Mortensen's second floor bedroom. I'm sorry, what? He repeated, The blonde gal and the guy that's upstairs, are they roommates too? None of my roommates are home, Xana said. Those are all my friends. Before leaving, the first officer asked Xana, Do you understand 100% what's going to happen? I understand, Xana said. I'm just going to tell everyone, get the fuck out of here. The two police officers eventually turned back to the driveway. You take care, one said to her. They snapped their flashlights off and the body cam footage went black. Chapter 27. Xana's mother, who sometimes went by the name Kara Kernodle, but more often Kara Northington, was arrested on drug-related charges in the days after Xana's murder. While detained in the Kootenai County Jail in Coeur d'Alene, Kara was provided with a public defender, Ann Taylor, who would serve as her legal counsel as she navigated the complicated court process. Taylor had also represented Maddie Mogan's family after similar drug-related brushes with the law. This wasn't unusual in the small and sometimes claustrophobic legal system of the far north, where very few attorneys choose to live. Northington was kept up to speed on the King Road homicide investigation by following the news from jail. But in December, the courts allowed Kara temporary release to attend the memorial service held for Xana and the other three victims at a Post Falls church. Xana's older sister Jasmine spoke to a large audience from the podium, reading from notes on her cell phone. She was my baby sister, but she was so much wiser and experienced so much more in life than I ever have, Jasmine said of Xana, eventually adding through sniffles. She was so positive and light-hearted and understood the gift of life more than anyone I know. Standing beside her, Xana's father Jeff kept his head down, hands deep in his pockets. I was so happy that she was dating Ethan, Jasmine said. Xana had never had a boyfriend before, and my dad and I wondered if she was ever going to get one. She smiled at the memory of her sister falling in love with Ethan. The way she would talk and smile about him was something I'd never seen her do before. She truly loved him so much, and I know he had so much love for her. After a beat, she added about all four of the victims. It's comforting to know that they are all watching down on us from heaven now. Jasmine was in tears by the time she ended her remarks. I love you so much, Xana. When she finished, she hugged her father. Jeff spoke next. That kid shone light to the day, he said of Xana, smiling as he fought back tears. She taught me how to be a dad, and I didn't know that until she was gone. Xana's sister stood beside him, sometimes shaking with sadness while listening to her dad. She really became the woman she was going to become. The last time he had seen Xana was a week before her murder. He had visited Moscow for the weekend and stayed in a nearby hotel. He had fixed the broken lock on the front door at the King Road residence for Xana and her roommates, according to Xana's mother, who had reportedly been in contact with Xana recently. The house had looked clean. Xana was taking care of business so far as Jeff was concerned. She was even looking after him, he told the mourners. After he consumed alcohol during their visit, Xana had taken the car keys away from him. You had too much to drink, Dad. You can't drive, Xana told him. We'll get you a ride to your hotel. He smiled at the memory of Xana being the responsible one, and that wasn't unusual, he remarked. She would often look after her roommates, too. She was being the mom to all the kids. Xana, whose mom had been missing for much of her life, had learned how to nurture and protect others. He was happy to see that. Everything was just about as good as it ever could have been, he said. Xana's mother did not make public remarks at the memorial. Instead, Kara fled, then got high for 4 days. She was rearrested, but remained free on her own recognizance while awaiting further court dates. She did not appear for those dates. She absconded to Spokane, Washington, where she reportedly got a hotel room and again got high on methamphetamine and fentanyl. While she was still on the run, News Nation was able to get a hold of her on her cell phone. She spoke to them on a split screen from inside a vehicle. Her voice sounded grainy and full of pain. She wore a bandana on her head and looked malnourished. Her eyes were sunken. What appeared to be her life belongings were stuffed into the back seat, the neck of a guitar poking into the frame. She choked on her tears. "Are you going to be all right?" the anchor Ashley Banfield asked her. "I hope so," Kara said. Eventually, Kara was apprehended and returned to Kootenai County. The Daily Mail spoke to her from the jail. "I relapsed after my daughter's killing," she told them. "Then 4 days after that, I got picked up on new charges. Then I didn't go to my next court date because I was still getting high." Somewhere along the road, Xana's mom had taken a few wrong turns. Now it was hard for her to find her way back. She was suffering from drug withdrawal in jail and still trying to wrap her head around what had happened to her daughter. "It's a fucking nightmare," Northington cried into the phone. Jeff Kernodle, too, was hounded by the press for interviews. He allowed his local station in Avondale, Arizona, to ask him a few questions over the phone. He was reportedly too distraught to appear on camera. His answers were brief. He had last heard from Xana on the night of the murders, he told the station. "At midnight," he said, "and she was fine." Her death was still so hard to comprehend. He had found minor salts in the autopsy report he'd been shown. Xana had apparently fought back against her killer. There were bruises on her arms. She was a tough kid, her dad said. He gave no more interviews. Chapter 28. When Ethan Chapin's mother gave birth to her triplets, Ethan was the first one out of the womb, followed by siblings at exactly 1 minute intervals. Ethan and his younger brother Hunter and sister Maisie shared an unusual bond of the roughly 3.6 billion births in America each year. Only about 3,000 are triplet births. Jim and Stacy felt especially blessed by an instantaneously full family. The Chapin trio and their parents lived in Mount Vernon, Washington, on the banks of the Skagit River in the Skagit Valley country farmhouse, known for its tulip industry. In the springtime, the tulip farms were like wide rainbows of color nestled between green forests and the snow-covered mountain peaks that lined the horizon. The Chapin home was spacious on an acre of lush green grass. Jim and Stacy owned Pacific Belting and Supply, selling and installing industrial conveyor belts, and made a nice living. Stacy had also been a teacher early on. The triplets attended the small public Conway School in Mount Vernon from kindergarten through 8th grade. Outside the school, the Chapins went on family vacations as the kids got older. They had the money and the love, and they didn't skimp on either. They traveled to the Dominican Republic and kayaked in the sea. They surfed in Mexico on boards twice as long as the kids were. They walked the beaches in Bahamas with swim towels draped around their necks. Closer to home, they chartered boats. They golfed together, played tennis, and picked apples. Even just around the house, the family was active. They planted a box garden on their sprawling lawn and lined it with freshly cut wood chips, the green sprouts catching full sunlight. They played basketball in their driveway after dinner, with the sun going down and the clouds thinning, and their American flag occasionally waving in the breeze. All three of the kids briefly played the clarinet. Ethan enjoyed sports above everything. He played club soccer for years, traveling to weekend tournaments with his brother and sister. At the Conway School, girls and boys played on the same team. Maisie, Hunter, and Ethan all practiced and played together in their matching blue shirts. The only difference was the red headband Maisie wore to keep her long hair pushed back. Our love language with Ethan was sports, his mother Stacy told a reporter. She had followed NFL football so she could bond with Ethan to a greater degree. She would send him text messages about the games she was watching. Stacy Chapin knew that sharing her children's passions would keep the family close. All three kids were athletic, so the family's life revolved around physical activities, especially when it came to Ethan. That and country music, his mom said, were his obsessions. And he was a good-natured goof. He was definitely the comedian of the three kids, she added. He always had something funny to say, and he was always laughing. Ethan's young basketball coach, the tattooed and bearded Tyler Amaye, said that to coach him was a pleasure. Ethan had been one of his favorite players and one of the top players on their county team since elementary school, when he was already tall for his age. He would practice twice a week at the gym in Burlington, 10 minutes from his home. He always gave you that sincere, genuine eye contact, Tyler told the local Fox station. You knew he was locked in with whatever you were telling him. Tyler and Ethan had stayed in contact over the years, even when Ethan was in college. You could see that this boy had a bright future ahead. He lit up many of my dark days, Tyler told another reporter. Days where maybe things went wrong for me. Ethan comes into the gym and all of a sudden everything is meaningful again. I don't have kids, but if I had a daughter, I'd want her to be with Ethan. Big boned and broad shouldered, Ethan was among the largest wherever he went. It was hard to imagine him falling prey to violence. In TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube videos, Ethan was always smiling. He wore shorts and shook his booty to any song that was playing, dancing in the living room, in his bedroom, in the kitchen, always dancing, always gyrating for a quick laugh with his strong legs bouncing across the floor. He got drunk with his friends, danced while wearing a woman's bikini top, played beer pong, dressed up as a hot dog, used an upturned safety cone as a bullhorn, sang country music into his fist like it was a microphone. When he was young, he was clean-shaven. Later, he grew a mustache. He shot hoops in the sun. He jumped over couches. He looked at the camera somebody was pointing at him, and he gave it the peace sign, like a hello, but also an exit. Chapter 29. Ethan and his siblings went to Mount Vernon High School. The Seattle Times refers to Mount Vernon's athletic facilities as the gold standard of high school gymnasiums and the Sistine Chapel of Washington gyms. For somebody like Ethan, it was perfect. He played basketball for the school, and even as a sophomore, he was already 6'4", tied with another boy for the tallest on the Bulldogs team. In the photo from the era, Ethan is resting his arm across the shoulder of his brother Hunter, also a forward on the team. Hunter, standing 6'3", holds the basketball between his hands like a weapon. Even on the court, they stood side by side. Basketball, more than other sports, held Ethan's heart. He refereed youth basketball on the weekends in Mount Vernon and had a knack for communicating the nuances of the game to younger kids. His own positive experiences with his youth coach had rubbed off. He was shaping into a solid player and was doing well at Mount Vernon. But then COVID-19 pandemic halted the school's operations. Ethan and his siblings left Washington State near the end of their junior year, immersing themselves in the natural world at the family's North Idaho summer home. They got jobs at the Hills Resort, a getaway loaded with lakeside and forest view cabins abutting the very blue, very pristine Priest Lake. At Hills, there was a restaurant with a stone hearth, boating and canoeing and kayaking options galore, and volleyball and tennis accommodations. The manicured flowered grounds led directly into the seemingly endless forested hills full of tamaracks and maples, which turned bright red in the fall. There was even a nearby golf course with boats. The outdoor deck sat hundreds beneath its red canvas umbrellas and had a view of the waters where bugs dappled the surface and fish jumped to catch them. By autumn, the family had returned to Washington, but not to Mount Vernon High School, which was still dealing with pandemic shutdowns. The triplets finished their senior year of high school remotely. Ethan also worked in the fields at Skagit Valley Tulip Farm, a 5-acre parcel of nutrient-rich soil brimming with dozens of varieties of vibrant tulips. Ethan, like many of the local kids, went to work preparing, seeding, and harvesting the land. According to his crew leader, Andrew Miller, Ethan set the bar for showing up with a smile and making everyone else happy to be on the job, regardless of the weather or the work. And the weather and the work could be nasty at times, with plenty of rain and an equal measure of hard labor to make things uncomfortable. As a strong kid with a big heart, Ethan was the kind of guy who would do the hardest jobs and never complain, Miller said of him. Ethan and his siblings went back to Priest Lake for another summer working at Hills Resort before all three of them headed to the University of Idaho. It was the summer after their senior year, but they'd really had no senior year at all, not in the traditional sense. There'd been none of the merrymaking that often accompanies those last moments and months of secondary education. No homecoming or prom with its tuxedos and gowns, no decorating of lockers or vehicles to celebrate graduation. They'd missed all that, and it was frustrating. But at Hills, they could ease back into the beautiful North Idaho landscape and dream about college, which hopefully would be accompanied by a return to their normal social lives. For now, Hills Resort wasn't such a bad stopover. They worked wherever the resort needed them. For Ethan, that was usually in the restaurant where he bussed tables or worked as an expediter in the kitchen, a liaison between the cooks and the waitstaff, making sure the food got plated and served on time. Even when Ethan wasn't scheduled to work, he would sometimes sit at table 42, the tall round table in the resort's dining room, while Maisie worked her shift waiting tables. He'd watch her work, and if she got busy and needed help, Ethan would jump into action. There were times when Ethan had just gotten off the lake from boating and would notice his friend in the restaurant getting slammed with customers. He would run into the dining area in his wet swim trunks and flip-flops to help out. If he wasn't working or boating, he was on the volleyball court or playing another sport, and always he was surrounded by friends. After his murder, there were hundreds of comments about Ethan on the Hills Resort Facebook page from people who had remembered him working in the restaurant those summers. Everywhere in the comments there were bright red hearts. Chapter 30. Jim and Stacy Chapin dropped their triplets off in Moscow on August 13th, 2021. The kids' backpacks were full of essentials, the rolling suitcases topped with IKEA bags. The sun was shining on every face in the family as they crossed the pavement together toward campus. Empty nester, Stacy Chapin posted on Instagram. She and her husband wore sunglasses in the picture, beneath which she commented, "Only for a few moments did I need them." She was referring to the tears she'd hidden behind her eyeglass lenses. The family had done everything together for almost 2 decades, and now the kids were embarking on their next adventure without Stacy and Jim. But at least the siblings had one another. Maisie joined Kappa Alpha Theta, a sorority house with a touch of Southern charm, to its circular second-story patio or an ornately carpeted, meandering staircase inside. Ethan and Hunter joined the Sigma Chi fraternity with its more drag accommodations, but a brotherhood the boys could appreciate. Inside the sprawling ranch-style Sigma Chi fraternity house, the living quarters were in sore need of updating. The bathrooms were so infrequently cleaned they looked like a biohazard. The bedrooms, though cleaner, were designed oddly, with mattresses squeezed closely together atop a series of wood-frame lofts with barely any ceiling clearance. But there was a secluded courtyard where parties could spill outside without much notice from the neighboring streets, from police, or from university officials. And there was an outdoor basketball hoop and concrete pad lined with spectator seating in the form of a dozen battered couches that became soggy in the rain, then dehydrated and filled with pollen by July. Ethan often took advantage of the makeshift court, shooting a basketball through the shifting net that could be seen from Banfield between him and the King Road residence that he would begin to frequent after meeting Xana. That first fall semester of college, Stacy and Jim visited the kids for parent and family weekend. The family went to dinner together, tailgated, and watched the University of Idaho Vandals football team stomp Southern Utah for a 42-24 victory. Later, they played cornhole, tossing beanbags in the dark in front of the Sigma Chi fraternity house. Stacy posted about the day on her Instagram account. It was perfect. University of Idaho for the win. Ethan, like most kids just getting to college after 2 years of COVID lockdowns, was experiencing the joy of finally socializing with his peers again, but also the mild discomfort that accompanied renewed confinement to classrooms. According to an English department advisor, he was struggling slightly with the curriculum, but he was passing his courses and excelling socially. And he'd become friends with Xana Kernodle, then started dating her. Stacy and Jim continued to bring their triplets together for family vacations, so life for the Chapin kids hadn't changed much. It had just gotten better. They had their freedom, and they had the comforts they'd grown up with at the same time. They spent their 2021 Christmas holiday at the Priest Lake Vacation Home. Maisie worked as a waitress at Hills during the Christmas break, and she was excited to be her parents' server when they ate there, bringing drinks in copper mugs to their lacquer table, the snow outside through the dining room windows weighing down the branches of the tamarack trees. For spring break, the family went to Mexico and swam in an infinity pool overlooking the ocean just north of Puerto Vallarta. The water was blue and the wind was in the palm trees lining the resort. The summer after Ethan's freshman year, Xana got a taste of the seemingly luxurious lifestyle and cozy vibes that accompanied hanging out with the Chapin family. That was the summer Ethan brought her to Priest Lake. They spent time on the boat together, went golfing, took hikes. Xana had started following Ethan's mother's Instagram account and had begun to like her photos. In one, a small herd of deer trotted across the golf course nestled between groves of evergreen trees. In another, a turtle was released into a pond. Everything seemed perfect, even the family's vacation home. It was over 3,000 square feet of timber frame construction and had vaulted ceilings, 4 bedrooms, and a 4-car garage on just 2 acres that looked out at the 12th green of the Priest Lake golf course. Ethan's girl had come a long way from the circumstances of her first few years, and Ethan had been happy to bring her into their fold. That fall semester, the two of them started spending time at the King Road residence. Dylan Morrison, Xana's second-floor roommate there, called Ethan and Xana the two best friends, but perfect pair together. They both would look at each other with so much love, she wrote in a note that was read at their memorial. Everyone knew they were the perfect duo, and they both had this fun, passionate, crazy but good energy. Dylan had only met Ethan that fall semester and wished she had gotten to know him more. He was so sweet and loving to Xana, she said. Xana was like his whole world, and you could see it in him. And Dylan felt Ethan's love as well, but differently. I got to experience what an older brother would be like, she said. He was easygoing and easy to talk to. Bethany Funk, the first floor roommate, said similar things. That in Ethan's presence, the whole vibe of the room would go up, and everyone was just instantly happier. Ethan and Xana's relationship, Bethany said, made people believe in true love. November 6, 2022, Stacy and Jim went back to the University of Idaho campus for their second parent and family weekend. All 5 of the family members stood together outside the Sigma Chi house for a photograph. There were leaves on the ground, and Stacy, a red mug in her hand, proudly wore a University of Idaho jacket. The rest of her family held red Solo cups, the sun in their eyes and a flush of their faces from the autumn weather. Ethan stood between his mother and sister, towering over them, his long arms draping around their shoulders. The dimples in his cheeks were as white as nickels when he smiled. Jim and Stacy could tell their triplets were doing well at school. We no longer have to worry about these kids, Stacy said as they headed home 1 week before Ethan's murder. And I think we'll stop there. So we did quite a lot. we went from, let me just reiterate, we went from chapter, I want to say, just wow, we went from chapter 7. Thank goodness. We went from chapter 7 and finished through chapter 30. That's a lot. So you've got a lot ahead of you to read here, the replay crew. Hoping to do my next reading on a live. Let me know on my community tab or leave in the comments which book you'd rather me do for our next live. I can pick back up on chapter 31 with While Idaho Slept, or I could read from Matthew Perry's amazing memoir. I read through the interlude, so we would be starting at chapter 8. And hopefully that live will be within the next few days. I'm dealing with one of the little pups who has a pretty bad ear infection, and we go back to the vet on Friday. So I'll know more then as far as what my schedule's like, because lately it's kind of just been waking up, hiding his pills in string cheese, then hiding his pills in either a burger or, yeah, don't kill me, linguine. He likes plain linguine with a spray of butter on it, like the fake butter. And then I crush the pill and put it in his linguine. No sauce, just plain linguine, like my son, with butter. It's weird, I know, but that's what I've been dealing with. So, and the eardrops for both dogs. So it's been, that was since last Friday. So yeah, it's kind of all been blurry. So just let me know if you're interested in either, continuing with this for my next live or Matthew Perry's memoir. Either one are, they're both amazing. So I could tell you with this book, we have chapters 31 through chapter 60 to go. So I'll probably go just as fast with those, but it's always up to you, my members, my subscribers, all the support and love. As you know, I've been grieving my dad's loss. Has not been easy, but all of your comments keep me going. I can't thank you guys enough. And for those that have so far joined as a member, thank you for supporting the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. If you're not a member, join, because we're going to start, when we do start back up, I will be doing a lot of, the readings will be more members only readings on certain nights of the week. I'm still trying to figure that out. So I hope that more of you could join with us on members only, and also we can, just do kind of like an open mic nights is what I would like to do with my members only. Play trivia, do fun things that we can talk more about once we're within the members only stream. I don't want to say much more here because I'd like it to be a surprise. So other than that, I do appreciate, again, that you guys listening to these pre-recorded readings. I know they're not as much fun as when we're all in chat and I'm reading. But for now, I hope this gets you through. It does for me. Keeps me connected. And I will see and talk to you all very soon. Love you all. Have a great night.